So I was just going to produce a nice video, well edited and all that, but I just ran out of time and wanted to get this posted because I think it's important, so I'm just going to make it on my phone and put it out there. One of the things that we're hearing a lot about that's driving me crazy in our hobby is every game is good as long as people have fun. And that's just wrong. And there's a good reason for that. That whole viewpoint comes from the moral relativism that kind of dominates society and people's thoughts these days. There is no absolute good, no absolute evil anymore, or very little of it anyway, and that has crept into our perception of gaming, and it's harming us all. The idea that it's okay if you just have fun at your tabletop and that makes your game good is a bad idea, and here's why. What's considered fun by probably the bulk of the hobby is sitting around at a game table making some in-jokes that new people don't understand, playing the way you've been playing for 20 years, which is kind of outdated and applies and appeals only to a small niche, mostly of fat, bald white guys like me. And that's harming our hobby. And our acceptance of that as good harms our hobby. Because guess what? It's not bringing people in. We're getting on to video games that are photorealistic in quality, and that attracts a lot of people for the immersion and for the ongoing new challenges that video games can bring. Now, done right, a tabletop RPG can completely dominate and totally overshadow any video game for variety of challenges, for nuance, for immersion, for character development. In a video game, your character develops along pre-programmed lines. They get better at killing things. They get better at the skills that the game allows. They don't evolve as an independent entity. And the great thing about role-playing when it's done right is your character has an arc and evolves as a person or a being. And you don't get that in video games. And you don't get that in most of the tabletop RPGs that are out there because the characters are not played as characters. To have your character evolve as a being, you've got to be in that character's head and in that character's space. And that's what 4D role-playing is all about. That's where it is better than other versions of role-playing. It's better than sitting there and playing a character sheet like you tend to do in a lot of D&D games. It's better than most RPGs. Almost any rule system can be played the 4D way. It just takes role-playing. It takes a willingness to get into the character's headspace and out of your own and be that character while you're playing. That happens when the mechanics don't get in the way, when you're not playing a character sheet. And that kind of play is the kind of play that allows your character to evolve, to have dimension, to have interest, to be compelling to replay. You want to return and find out what happens to that person. If you're playing a character the way most role players play them as a bunch of stats on a sheet that can do stuff, that has skills, that rolls a dice to resolve something, you're not going to get anywhere with that. It's going to pale and pall very quickly for most people. And that's why our hobby is stuck with the niche of players that we have. It doesn't attract new people with different interests. To get beyond our niche, to bring in a whole new, not just group, but type of thinking into our games and our gaming, we need to realize 4D is the way forward. This is a way to attract people and keep them so they'll return. And we're not doing it. And the people who are doing it, everybody says the same thing. Oh, that's great if your table likes it. But we don't. We play this way. And we have fun. And that's okay. Well, you know what? On one level, no, it isn't. To give you an analogy, look at the model railroading hobby that's evolved over the past 30 years. 30 years ago, you put an oval of track or a figure eight of track on a 4x8 piece of plywood and you watched your train chase its tail around the board. Nowadays, you have people mimicking realistic rail operations. You have scenery and detailing that goes way above and beyond. And the hobby has evolved. And the hobbyists have evolved with it. And that's why, even though the demographic age is aging, new people continue to come into that hobby and find it compelling enough to keep at it for 20 plus years. Listen to most of the online people, especially the older ones. Yeah, I played it when I was young and took a 40-year hiatus, and now I've come back to it and I find it's pretty horrifying. And that's because nothing has changed in role-playing in 20 years. And we need to change. We need to move into the 4D headspace. We need to have a game that will draw new people in and keep them coming back. And you do that by having the richness that can develop in a character by being that character. So, what I'm saying is there is an objective good and bad here. When the old generation version of role-playing is great for nostalgia, but it's not sustainable to bring new people in. And unless we change and start bringing new people in, our hobby's going to atrophy. And that's what we're seeing. So you can hate me and say that I'm mean because I'm saying your fun game is a bad game. You know, feel free to let me know. Argue back if you think you have a cogent argument about how old-style gaming will attract new people and new types of people. And we'll just see. But I think the truth of the matter is, unless you're starting to do 4D gaming, you're not going to have many people to game with much longer. And that's unfortunate, but it's absolutely true. Thanks for listening.